There you go. Okay, I think we're ready to start. Uh, Welcome, Jay. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah.
And we really appreciate your time. And yeah, we're ready to hear what you have on visual calculations.
Can you hear me okay? Is that coming through? Because that's going to be interesting. I'm not sure
Yeah.
if because I'm muted. So did you?
Let
I can unmute my mic.
Yeah, please.
Let's see. How do I? Oh, here. Unmute. There we go. Okay, so that should be better.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, no worries.
No worries.
So yeah, visual calculations. It's a brand new feature that we have here in the DAX world, and the reason is really DAX is hard, right? DAX is very hard. It's all about the feedback that we're getting from our users is that DAX is just complicated, and it's hard to use. Most people just do copy paste of a DAX statement they find somewhere online, and they just hope for the best, right? You copy paste and you cross your fingers and you hope it works.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's a challenge, right? Because we want to make stuff simpler, and just copy pasting and hoping for the best is not a good experience. So that's really where we started on visual calculations. And if you think about it, what makes DAX so hard? It's actually about the fact that whatever you do in DAX today has to live inside of the model. And because it's in the model, so the measures and stuff like that you define there, it will be complicated because you have to worry about the model, the structure of the model, as well as the filter context that's in there. So that the fact that the context in which the measure gets evaluated impacts the result of the measure. And it's really hard. We don't do a good job of explaining that to you, what the context is that the measure is being executed in. So with that in mind, we started visual calculations.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think this will be helpful for everybody starting or even with experience with Power BI. And we've spent like a couple hours for a simple calculations. We gather the team, and yeah, this will be huge. So yeah, if you have something to show us.
Yes, I will. I can actually show you something. Let me just present share my screen over here.
And I want to welcome Daniel. He's in our office in Monterrey. Daniel, no, so shy.
Hey.
Hi.
So I'm just going to share my screen. Let me know if you can see that.
Yeah, let me add. There you go.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Yep. Okay, so I'm loading. Oops. Let me just close my Teams real quick because there might be messages coming in that I don't want to. So here I'm just loading some sample AdventureWorks, right? So I'm just very simply going to take some model and do a sales amount and a total product cost, for example, and I'm going to turn it into a table, and I'm going to add, let's say, calendar year, right? I'm going to add that in. Oops, this is not properly modeled, as you can see. It's not very nicely modeled. It should be, I shouldn't summarize that because it's a year. Anyway, it's probably an old model. Doesn't really matter. I can keep going. Okay, so calendar year. Right, so now I should have a table, for example, with, or let me just turn it into a bar chart. That's maybe better, right? So I have this. It shows me total product cost and sales amount. Very simple, very straightforward, right? Oops, I just turned it to a line chart. Oh, whatever, it's okay, doesn't matter. So now, instead of having to do like calculations on the measures and having to define them inside of the model, which the model itself is, I mean, it's probably pretty nice. It should be probably pretty nice. Where is it? Oh, it's just one layout. Wait, here. I mean, the model itself is not horrible, right? It's a star schema,
Right.
But still, if you define a measure in here, you still don't necessarily know, if I define a measure on this table, depending on the settings that people make, for example, for the currency or for the customer they select or for the product category they select, using, for example, slice or a cross selection, you don't necessarily know how that measure is being calculated. So that is what makes DAX so hard. So instead, what I can do now is I can select this visual. Then I have a new button over here that's new calculation. And when I do that, I actually enter into what we call Visual Calcs edit mode. And Visual Calcs edit mode then shows me the visual here on the top that I just selected. And then I see some formula bar. We'll talk about that in a second. And then I see the visual, what we like to call the visual matrix. And the visual matrix is it shows the aggregated data that we're showing in the visual. So if you look at this, you will see that, for 2017, the sales amount was 3,600,000 and something. That is then also exactly the data point that I have here, right? That one. And then the total product cost was just over 2 million. So that's also correct. So these two things are connected, right? You can do the math. You can see that these numbers are correct. Now, it also shows a total, which is not shown in the visual, but this basically shows the numbers that we need to put the visual onto the screen. There might be millions of rows under here, right? There might be individual sales amounts for millions and millions of actual individual sales record that all make up to that 3 million something for example, 2017. But that's not the point. At this point, we don't care about all those details. Now, I can now add a new calculation, which essentially adds a new column to that visual matrix. You can already see there's an empty column in here. I can start typing my calculation. So I can, for example, do profit is sales amount minus total product cost. Now, this should have been a measure,
Right.
Because, this is such a core thing that I probably want to reuse everywhere. But just for simplicity's sake, I'm doing that in a visual calc. But a couple of things to notice here. It should be a measure. Also, I don't have a table reference because I don't have to care about the table. It's just one table. And I also don't have to write an aggregate, right? I could do this, a sum of sales amount, but it doesn't matter because these calculations are executed like a calculated column, row by row. So they go top to bottom across the thing. So if I do this, press enter, now I get a profit calculation. That's the difference between sales amount and total product cost for every row.
Makes sense,
right?
Right.
Okay, so let's do something more intelligent. I want to do a comparison of profit versus the previous year. Okay, so that's a problem that DAX is not really good at, right? DAX is really hard. In DAX, it's really hard to get a value from something that came before me, right? So how do I do that? Well, in measures, it's hard. Here, it's not that hard. I can just give it a name. I'm just going to take the profit, and then I'm going somehow I want to subtract the previous year's profit to calculate the difference over the years, right? So I'm just going to use a new function that we call previous. So I'm just going to type previous and then say profit. And I can have all kinds of parameters on here. It doesn't really matter right now. Default is just one step. So if I now do this, what I'm going to get is the difference in the profit over the years, right? So this number is negative because the profit in this year was less than the profit before. So that's why this number is negative, right?
Right. Makes sense.
Very simple to get a previous. Now let's do something more advanced. Maybe a running sum would be good. Could be good, right? So let's try profit running sum. So what do you think? Now that you know that there's a previous function, what function would you use to do a running sum?
I learned this in Las Vegas last year, so let's do it.
I'm just gonna say it. It's a running sum. A running sum of profit. And is that easy? Well, yeah, it is that easy. Look at that. Now we just have a running sum of profit. It's so simple. I just have the numbers and they just show up like that. And I can keep going. There's a moving average function. There's a percent of parent, percent of grand total, average of children versus for previous we just did versus next, first and last. So we have loads of functions. I can also do a moving average, for example. So I have a template button over here that allows me to just easily discover these things. Moving average. Put the moving average function, type in the profit, do a window size of 2, which basically says for every year, I want to look at the current year plus the year before it. So for 2018, it would be the average of 2017 and 2018. For 2019, it would be the average of 2018 and 2019. For 2020, it would be the average of 2019 and 2020. Done. Average. And then now, if I look at my visual, it's pretty ugly, right? It's not very pretty. I can start hiding stuff from my visual. So this is also very interesting. I can decide not to show something on the visual. Now, the rule is these visual calcs are so simple because they can only work with what's on the visual. So profit, it uses sales amount and total product cost to calculate its result. So I cannot delete sales amount from the visual, because then profit doesn't know that sales amount exists, because it can only see what's here on this visual matrix. So instead of deleting, I can hide it. So if we here go on the right, I can actually hide total product cost and sales amount from view. I can also hide profit, and I'm just going to take the versus previous one and move the running sum and the moving average to my my tooltip. And now I've got a clean visual, right, with just one line, which is the profit versus previous, and then all the other things, the running sum and the moving average, are in my tooltip. And that's now I created a visual that didn't exist before, that used to be very complicated DAX to create. So yeah, that's Visual Calcs in a nutshell. Very simple, powerful way of working with calculations.
Great. So basically, we have a subset of data table that is related to this specific visualization.
Right? Correct. Yes.
Okay, and you cannot reference this because this is not part of the model. Correct.
Right. It's individual.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so this is part of what you're trying to do, basically simplify for the users instead of learning that and try to learn all the context, row context, filter context, and focus on the visualization.
Yes, right? getting stuff done in your visualization. Yeah. So the fact that they are part of your visualization is a good thing for ease of use. It's very easy to work with them. You don't have to worry about all this complexity. The downside is that they are not as reusable as measures, right? Yeah, so that's the downside. And that might change, right? This is still in a preview. I think the preview is now a month old, not even, less than a month old, maybe 3 weeks. So we will work on a better reusability story, how you can reuse these calculations over and over and over again. But right now, this is the story, right? It's covered in a visual, and we should find a way to kind of like easily reuse them. I don't think I know for sure we're not going to push them back into the model, because if you push them back into the model, you would have to worry about filter context, everything again, right? So that's the whole point. We're taking that out of the model to make it easier. You don't have to worry about filter context. And if we then put those things back into the model, they would turn into measures. So you would kind of be back at square one. So we're not going to put them back into the model, but I think there's like ways we can allow reuse and discoverability as well.
Great. So we have this in preview, and when are you thinking that it will be general available?
That's hard to say. We just started on the preview, right? It's less than a month. We still have so much work to do, and also people find bugs and issues with it. And there's for example, there's loads of things that we still have to do. For example, if you go in here, back to the Visual Calcs edit mode, if you look closely, that we lost the formatting, right? So let me just get rid of this guy. It's just a placeholder. But these numbers, the numbers generated by the Visual Calc, are not formatted at all, right? And there's no way for me to format it yet, right? I cannot go in here and go, in here, and no, look, it's not even here, right? Like I don't even see it. I don't even see the way to format things, right? Where a column you can format, and a measure you can format, but a Visual Calc you cannot format, right? What I mean is if you go out of here, if you go in here to a measure, for example, right, you can say this stuff, right? What is it? Is it the percentage? Is it the number? Is it the currency? What kind of decimals? All of this is not available yet, right? So there's loads of things that we still have to do for Visual Calcs. So we have a long way ahead of us. So I cannot really tell you when it's coming to general availability. We're working on it every month, updating it and adding more features. There's more stuff that we want to do, more functions. So general availability will be a long time out. I cannot really tell you when that's going to come. I don't know for sure.
Got it. Thanks. So regarding the running sums, like when you are using rows and columns, and you change the direction of these calculations, do you have something on that?
Yes.
You can show you.
So you lean to an interesting point here. So actually what is happening here under the covers is that if I go, for example, to this one, sorry, let me get the right one. So here, how did it figure out that previous meant going up, right? Because previous, what it did, it was take the number from the year above it. And actually, there's a hidden parameter here that is by default set to what we call rows. So if I start typing, again, I can now see, if I type rows, I see this new parameter that is, it has little downwards pointing arrows, as you can see, which basically is an indication that we call this the axes. This tells us how to execute this calculation. So this means it is going row by row across the rows from top to bottom. So this is the default, right? So you don't have to write this, so this won't change anything, right? It's the same function, the same result. I just typed rows, right? But you could also have columns. Now, columns, if I start typing columns in here, columns is not available, right? So if I type columns, it won't show, right? It's not there. That's because my visual doesn't have any columns, because there's nothing on the columns. This is a line chart, so I don't have anything on the column. But if I change this, for example, to a matrix, right, now I can move things into the columns. So let me just move the calendar year into the columns. And then, yes, this is going to happen because I was expecting that. And I'm going to use, I'm putting my color on the rows. Now, suddenly, all my calculations are now done over colors, right? So this is a very flexible way of writing that, because if I go look at this, the previous one that I did, nowhere does it say color now, right? It just says whatever happens to be on the rows going down from top to bottom, that is what I'm going to do the previous on. So now all of these numbers are getting the results from the previous color, because that's on rows. But if I wanted to do the year thing, because I have years now on columns, I can now write columns, look, and then it shows, okay, that's a comparison left to right across the columns. Now you will see that this number is versus the previous year, which there is no other year. This one is then the difference between this number and that number, right? So now we're going horizontally across the columns on the years. Not going down anymore, just going horizontally across. So that's what columns does. So it's a very flexible way of working with this. If you did this in a measure, you would have to write that you actually wanted to do this over year, right? Which is an option. You can do this,
Yep.
But it's less flexible, right? Because the moment you change whatever is on the columns, this will break because calendar year is no longer there. So in a measure, you have to pin everything down. Here, I can just write columns and be done with it, right? And then also, I can also just have a combination of those, and that's a little bit weird. But let me get the quarter. The quarter here, calendar quarter. And then the color, I'm gonna get rid of the color for a second. So now we just have the years on the columns and the quarters on the rows. So still, my versus previous, I'm gonna use my other thing, the profit running sum. So this thing is still going top to bottom. So if you look at this, it adds this number, right? Plus this number, that's gonna be the number here. So I'm just, that's rows. Makes sense. I can do that left to right. So then I get a running sum for, columns, right? So this is now a running sum in the years. So the first result will be the year for this one. So that's indeed 7.3. And then I can go here to the right and we'll see that profit here is 1.2 million, which is 5.4 something plus the 7.3 from before. So that's indeed 1.2. We keep going. And now the running sum is 2.4 because our new profit is 1.6. We already had 1.2, so that's 2.4. We keep going to the right. Makes sense. Now I can do something more interesting. And I can say, you know what? I'm going to do columns, rows. So this means instead of just going left to right or just going top to bottom, I can do left to right, but then keep going. So it's like almost like a snake across your matrix. So if I do this, now we're seeing suddenly results showing up in here, because what it does is if you scroll to the right, you see the profit here is running sum of this. Makes sense, the first year. Okay, great. This one, of course, is the same as running sum from before. 2020, same thing. Okay, so now we have this number, 3.190, right? Remember that. Then we get to the second row. Before this was empty. But now with columns, rows, I can say, okay, if there's no column to the left of me, I can go find the result from the last column in the previous row and show that in here, right? So now we're snaking down. So this number here, this number over here is exactly the same as this number over here because there was no profit for this year, for this quarter. Now, this will continue. This will just be that number plus the current profit. This will be that number plus the current profit. This will be the number plus the current profit. And again, 6.57, next row, we get 6.57 plus whatever the profit is for that quarter in 2017, which is 700,000. So that's approximately 7 million and a bit. We keep going, same thing. So it snakes down, first going left to right and then top to bottom. And then the third thing you could do, of course, you expect it by now, I could also write rows, columns to go top to bottom first and then left to right. Now I go top to bottom first. So then these numbers will be going down. And then when we get to the next year, this will now 2 million because it's 1.4 million over here plus the 740 that we had. So that's that plus that is 2 million. Go down the rows again. So the end result for this column is 4 million and something. Then for the next year, we add the 800,000, the 600,000. So that's about 747, right? So you can see now it's going top to bottom and then to the right. So that's how you can use axes to change how the calculation operates over the visual matrix.
It's great, and it totally makes sense, and it will simplify the way we write some DAX specifically for running sums and all these calculations.
Yes.
What about the reset parameter? Is that working yet, or are we waiting for that?
Well, let's try. So one thing I could do is I could say, maybe I should get a better example than here than just this. I'm gonna get. Let me just create a new visual so we can easily see that. So I'm gonna get the sales amount, and I'm gonna get the the calendar year. I'm gonna add this is also not properly formatted. Sorry about that. Don't summarize this. And I'm going to get the calendar quarter. So now, okay, so now we have the calendar years on the left, and then the columns are the quarters, right? So what I can do is if I can now write a new calculation in here, and I say running sum, right? So RS sales amount. It is just a running sum of sales amount, right? Makes sense. So if I do this, what is going to happen is it's going to go across the years. Makes total sense, right? Column by column by column by column. Okay, now, if I wanted, I could actually say columns. That would then go left to right. So for then we get a running sum within the year. Great. Now, this is all good, but you know, what if I wanted to continue across my years, but not just calculating every year. So what I can do is if I can change this to move this quarter over here. Whoops, yeah, that's not working, I know. So I'm just going to change it to a simple table so I can easily see it. Now we have the quarters and the years over here, right? So I see 2017, quarter 4, 2018, 1, 2, 3, 4. If I do a running sum over here, running sum of sales amount, I do the same thing as before, but look at what happened. When I get here, this is 2018, the first quarter, it's 5 million. That is indeed a total of 3.6 million plus this one.
Yeah.
But that's maybe not what you wanted, because you might want to get something else, right? So let me just, your business user might say, you know what, I actually want to restart for every new year. So I want to calculate the running sum within the year for each quarter. So now I can say, okay, reset is highest parent, for example, which basically means highest field with children, which is in this case calendar year, because quarter is a child of calendar year. That is what I'm going to reset on. So this means whenever this value changes from 2017, so over here, it has changed, it should start from 0. When it changed again, it should start from 0. When it changes again, it should start from 0. So if I do this, now you should, did it do it? No, it didn't. Why doesn't it do it? What am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? What is wrong here? Let me just try that in this guy. Maybe I'm just mistaking. Let me just check. I think, yeah, there we go. Okay. So I don't know why that didn't work in the table, but in here, you can see now the running sum is now being restarted for quarter number 1, right? So 2018-1, the running sum is now restarted. And now we're just calculating literally the running sum within the year. Right? So now I have a running sum for each year for all the quarters. If I remove this, look at what the value says, right? The value is now changing, right? So the values are now continuously going down. So the total is now 21 million, which is probably not what your user wanted, right? Your user actually wanted to do a reset to say start over whenever the year changes. Make sense?
Makes sense. So basically, we used to do this with a calendar table and dates year to date, and this will work not only for calendar tables but also for any kind of hierarchy, right?
Yes. Yeah, it will work for any kind of hierarchy. So I'm just using a calendar because it's easier to understand, but you can do it whatever you want, right? You can use colors, you can use sizes, whatever you want. It's not just tied for a calendar.
Yeah, it makes sense because I remember a customer asking for a specific report and spending like 3 hours trying to do that. We did it, but definitely it will be easier.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. So as you can see here now visually, right? You see the running sum for 20 so whenever the year changes. So here in now quarter 1 2018, you see now the result is the same as the light blue bar, right? And for every time that the year changes, the result is started to be the same as the light blue bar.
That's great.
Yep. That's a reset parameter for you.
Thank you. Okay. So anything else that you want to share with us? I know you're having the conference on March.
Yes.
So anything else that you want to share with us?
There's a couple of interesting things that we have here. We also are now doing is at level, which I find very interesting. So I can now say is at level calendar quarter, for example. What this will do is we'll give true false. So we'll tell me whether or not we're currently in the quarter level. So if I do this, as you can see, whenever we are doing something on the quarter, it will say true. But whenever we're on a total, it says false. So with this, I could actually influence what is happening on the totals, right? So I know that's something that some people have been asking for. I can now say, well, if I am at the level of quarter, I'm just going to return the running sum of sales amount, as we said. But then if I'm not on the quarter, I'm going to return 0, right? So now all totals turn into zeros. So I can now start deciding what I want to do with those totals, right? And of course, if we change this logic a little bit to say if at level calendar year, you can see what that does. Now it is always the number from running some sales amount except for the grand total, right? So if I just wanted to change the grand total, I can test for running sum of year, calendar year, is at level of calendar year. And I can also just do, for example, it's at level for quarter, but not calendar year, then I will get something else, right? Whoops, did I just make a mistake there? I think so. I think I did a typo. What did I do? Oh, I've got a closing bracket here. Oh yeah, there we go. So now I've changed this to, I still made a mistake. I think I should have done the not around, the other way around. So I'm not at the quarter level, but I am still at the year level. Then I do something, otherwise I do something else. So now I get a different result. Right now I'm just only changing these 4 numbers, right? So this is how you can change the behavior for the totals as well. So this is, you can see how visual calculations using the if and is at level pattern of using the is at level here is kind of the foundation for us to allow you to specify what kind of totals you want. So that's something that we're thinking through what that should look like. So yeah, and then the other thing to say, this is just a preview. We just got started. Please send your feedback. Let me just get my a new browser window open here. So we can see aka.ms/visual calcs feedback. That's where I want you to go to give me feedback on this feature.
We will for sure.
If it works. I don't know why. There we go. So now you get to aka.ms/visual-calcs-feedback, and then you have loads of feedback here that people gave me, and I interacted with them. I still need to get back to some of these because I was traveling last week. But so if you have any feedback on this topic, please feel free to leave it here so I can easily react and build the best feature possible. So yeah.
Thank you, Daniel. Well, question before we let Jay go.
Oh yes, I was just going to ask.
You're good. Let me.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
No, we can hear you.
Well, let me see.
Uh,
Can you hear me now?
No, we can't. Okay.
Well,
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Just send me your questions later. Leave feedback on this link. I think that's the most important message.
We will. Well, I know you've been traveling, so thank you for the time you took for us.
No worries.
We will be bugging you in the next few months. Okay.
I'm planning on it, and try it. Give it a try. Give visual calculations a try and let me know what you think. And I'm looking forward to your feedback.
Thank you. Thank you for the
Thank you
time.
so much. See you.
Bye.
Bye.